At this exact moment, there are people living on the coldest, driest, most isolated continent on the surface of this planet. Not researchers visiting for a week, not explorers passing through. People who woke up this morning in Antarctica, who will eat their meals there tonight, who will go to sleep there in a darkness so complete that the stars are visible at midday. Antarctica has no permanent population. No indigenous people ever lived here. No country owns it. No city has ever been built on it that was intended to last. And yet, at this moment, roughly 1,000 people are spending the winter there. The long winter. The one that lasts 8 months. The one where the last flight out departs in February and the next flight in does not arrive until October. For those 8 months, there is no way in and no way out. Not because of weather, not because of cost, because the continent itself makes it physically impossible. The seas freeze. The runways disappear under drifts. The temperatures drop low enough that jet fuel thickens in the lines. Antarctica does not close. It simply stops allowing you to leave. The people who choose to stay through the winter understand this before they sign the contract. They understand that on the day the last plane lifts off the ice runway and banks north toward New Zealand, they will watch it go, and then they will turn back toward the station, and that will be it. Whatever the next 8 months hold, they hold it here. Some of them are scientists, glaciologists, astrophysicists, marine biologists, people who came to study the planet from its most extreme vantage point. Most of them are not. Most of them are the people without whom none of the science would be possible. The mechanics who thaw frozen engines in temperatures that make metal brittle. The cooks who keep morale alive through the polar night. The electricians, the plumbers, the network engineers who hold the station together so that the scientists can do their work. They chose this. Every single one of them chose it. This is the story of why. Antarctica is the size of Europe and Australia combined. It holds 90% of the world's ice and 70% of its fresh water, locked in a sheet that in places is 4 kilometers deep. The average elevation is over 2,000 meters. The air at the South Pole is equivalent, physiologically, to standing at 4,000 meters anywhere else on Earth. The thin, dry cold reaches into the lungs differently here. Newcomers feel it in the first hours. A tightness, a slight dizziness. The body asking what has happened to the air it was promised. The temperature at the interior stations in winter drops below -60 degrees Celsius. The record, recorded at a Soviet station called Vostok in 1983, was -89.2 degrees, the coldest temperature ever measured on the surface of this planet. At those temperatures, exposed skin freezes in under a minute. Metal becomes brittle enough to shatter. Diesel fuel must be kept continuously circulating through the lines to prevent it from gelling. If a vehicle stops and is not immediately attended to, it may never start again. The wind is the other force. Katabatic winds pour off the polar plateau like water off a table, accelerating as they go, reaching speeds of 300 kilometers per hour in the worst storms. These are not gusts. These are sustained winds that press against the walls of the buildings for days at a time, that fill the air with driven snow so dense that visibility drops to zero within meters of the door. During a condition, one storm, the highest level of weather emergency, no one is permitted to leave the buildings, not even to cross to the building next door. People have died in Antarctica, within meters of shelter, disoriented by whiteout conditions they walked into with nothing but a short path ahead of them. And then the light changes. In summer, the sun does not set. For 4 months, it circles the sky in an unbroken spiral. 24 hours of light, a brightness that makes clocks meaningless and sleep a matter of discipline rather than instinct. Blackout curtains are standard issue. Keeping a regular schedule becomes a daily act of will. And then the sun goes below the horizon for the last time, and it does not come back for 6 months. The polar night is not darkness in any ordinary sense. The moon reflects off the ice with extraordinary clarity. The stars, in air, with no humidity and no pollution, are overwhelming. The Milky Way is not a smear across the sky here. It is a textured, three-dimensional structure, a thing you feel the depth of in a way that is impossible anywhere else. And then, on the clearest nights, the aurora australis, green curtains of light that move like something alive, that fold and ripple and collapse and rebuild in silence. People who have wintered in Antarctica and seen the aurora describe it the same way, consistently, across decades of accounts. They describe it as the most beautiful thing they have ever seen. And they describe it as something that made them feel, for a moment, like a very small creature on a very old planet, watching something that did not need them to witness it. This is the environment in which roughly 1,000 people choose every year to spend 8 months. The question is not whether it is extraordinary. The question is, what kind of person signs up for it voluntarily, and what they find when they get there. The first thing newcomers notice, stepping inside a station after their first time outdoors, is the warmth. Not just the temperature, the smell of food, the sound of voices, the particular quality of light in a room full of people who have decided, collectively, that they are going to make this work. The research stations of Antarctica are self-contained in a way that almost no other human settlement is. Every system, power, heat, water, waste, food, runs on what the station carries and what it can maintain. There is no grid to connect to, no supply run possible in an emergency, no calling someone in to fix what breaks. At McMurdo Station, the largest American base, the summer population reaches over 1,000 people. It has dormitories, a coffee shop, a gym, a library, a small store, a bar, the kind of infrastructure that makes a winter overpopulation of around 150 feel, on certain evenings, almost like a small town. At the Amundsen-Scott South Pole Station, the winter crew is smaller, 40 to 50 people, depending on the year. At the British Rothera station on the peninsula, fewer still. At some of the smaller national bases, Norwegian, Indian, Chinese, the winter population can drop to single digits, 8 people, 6 people. People who will spend the long, dark months knowing the names of every other human being within hundreds of kilometers. The social structure that forms in these conditions is unlike anything in ordinary life. Within weeks of the last flight out, the winter crew becomes something different from the summer community that preceded it. The distinctions of rank and title flatten. A senior scientist and a first-year dishwasher share the same cleaning duties, called house mouse, on a rotating schedule. The physicist who published in Nature last month scrubs the same bathroom as the mechanic who fixed the generator this morning. Status here is not derived from credentials. It is derived from competence, from reliability, from the willingness to do what needs doing without being asked. The cooks are among the most valued people on the station. In an environment where comfort is limited and the options for recreation are finite, a well-prepared meal carries weight that it cannot carry anywhere else. A birthday cake baked from scratch in the middle of the polar night. A Sunday roast with food that was flown in on the last summer flight and held in the freezer for months for exactly this occasion. These are not small gestures. They are the maintenance of something essential. The hydroponic greenhouses that larger stations maintain are another version of the same thing. Small rooms, warm and humid and improbably green, where lettuces and herbs and tomatoes grow under artificial light while the temperature outside hovers around -50. The first fresh lettuce of the winter, harvested and served at dinner, is an event. People talk about it beforehand. They remember it afterward. The smell of living plants in a world of ice and metal is a thing that reaches somewhere deep in the brain and tells it that everything is still all right. Water is produced by melting snow, an energy-intensive process that makes every liter a calculated resource. Waste is sorted, packaged, and shipped off the continent when the summer vessels return. Nothing is left behind. The Antarctic Treaty that governs the continent requires it. The environment that makes this place extraordinary requires it. Every task in Antarctica carries a weight it does not carry elsewhere. A leaking pipe is not an inconvenience. A failing generator is not a delay. In an environment where the outside temperature is incompatible with human survival, the maintenance of warmth and light is the maintenance of life itself. The mechanics understand this better than anyone. Before any repair can begin in deep winter, the engine block must first be thawed, a process that can take hours with a specialized heater before a single wrench is applied. Tools left outside, even briefly, must be retrieved immediately. The cold does not forgive inattention, but inattention, in a community this small and this interdependent, is something that almost never happens, because everyone in the room understands what everyone else is carrying, and because the person next to you at dinner is also the person whose work keeps the lights on while you sleep. The departure of the last summer flight is a moment that every winter over describes the same way. They gather on the ice to watch it go. They stand in their red parkas and they watch the aircraft climb and bank and diminish and disappear into the northern sky. And then they stand there a little longer in the silence that follows before turning back toward the station. Some of them feel relief. The summer season is intense and crowded and loud. The winter, by contrast, is theirs. A smaller group, a slower pace, a quiet that most of the world never experiences. Some of them feel something harder to name. The understanding, arriving not as a thought, but as a physical sensation, that the world they came from is now genuinely unreachable, that whatever comes next comes here. All winter, over personnel undergo extensive psychological screening before they are accepted. The program selects not just for competence, but for temperament, for the ability to function in close quarters with the same small group of people for months at a time, for the resilience to handle disagreements without escalation in an environment where there is nowhere to go and no way to leave. Relationships in these conditions are amplified. Small irritations that would dissolve in the ordinary world, where you can simply go somewhere else, become things that must be managed deliberately and with care. Stations develop norms around this, social customs that protect the community from itself. The recognition that the person who annoys you today is also the person who will pull you out of trouble tomorrow. June 21st is midwinter, the longest night of the year, the Antarctic equivalent of a major holiday, a tradition that stretches back to the earliest expeditions of the heroic age. On this day, every station on the continent celebrates a large meal prepared over several days with whatever the kitchen can produce, handmade gifts exchanged between people who have been living in close quarters for months, messages transmitted between stations, formal greetings from crew to crew across thousands of kilometers of empty ice. It marks the halfway point of the long dark. After midwinter, the light begins, imperceptibly at first, and then with increasing speed to return. The aurora australis is the companion of the winter. On clear nights, which come often in the dry polar air, it fills the sky with a light that has no equivalent anywhere else on Earth. Green and sometimes red and occasionally violet, moving in shapes that the eye tries to pass as familiar. Curtains, waves, spirals, and cannot, because there is nothing on Earth quite like it. People leave the warmth of the station at -40 to stand outside and watch it. They stand as long as they can, which in those temperatures is not very long. They go back inside. They warm up. They go out again. There is a syndrome documented in Antarctic winter overpopulations called polar T3 syndrome. Thyroid hormone levels fluctuate in response to the absence of light. Mood changes. Energy levels drop. Cognitive function shifts in ways that are measurable but rarely severe enough to be debilitating. Stations are equipped with full-spectrum light boxes that simulate daylight. Routines are structured specifically to counteract the physiological effects of months without a sunrise. And then, one morning, usually in late August or early September, there is a brightening on the horizon, not the sun itself, just the suggestion of it. A warmth in the light that had been absent for so long that most people had stopped noticing its absence. The return of the sun is a celebration, a sunrise party, marking the end of the long dark and the beginning of the slow return of the outside world. The first flights will arrive in October. New people, fresh food, news from the world they stepped out of 8 months ago. But before that, there is this moment, the first light of the returning sun on the ice, casting shadows where there had been no shadows for half a year. The community gathers to watch it, the same way they gathered to watch the last plane go. And most of them, in that moment, feel something that is difficult to explain to anyone who has not been there. Something close to gratitude, not for the sun coming back, for having been present for the dark. In the ice, beneath the research stations, there are layers of air trapped in bubbles. Air from 800,000 years ago, from before the first cities, from before the first agriculture, from a world that had no word for the things it would eventually become. The scientists drill down through those layers and bring them back to the surface and read them, the way you read a letter written by someone who could not have known you would exist to read it. The climate of a world that humans had not yet changed, recorded in the chemistry of the ice, waiting to be understood. This is what Antarctica offers that nowhere else on Earth can offer. Not just data, not just science. A vantage point so remote from everything ordinary that the ordinary becomes visible in a way it cannot be from inside it. The people who winter here return changed. Most of them say this, and most of them struggle to say exactly how. They are quieter, some of them, more deliberate, less willing to mistake noise for substance or speed for progress. They come back, having spent 8 months in a place where what mattered was evident: warmth, food, the person next to you, and they find that the clarity does not immediately dissolve when they land back in a world where everything is available at all times. Many of them go back. Some of them go back for years. There is a community of people who have wintered in Antarctica multiple times, who know the particular quality of the midwinter silence, who have watched the aurora so many times, they no longer try to describe it to people who have not seen it, who feel, in the ordinary world, a restlessness that only the ice seems to resolve. They call themselves, informally, ice people. The continent itself does not know they are there. The ice sheet that buries mountains to their peaks will still be there long after every station has been decommissioned and every record has been archived, and every person who ever stood on this ground has been forgotten. Antarctica predates us. It will outlast us. There is a version of this story that is about the science, about ice cores and climate records and astrophysics at the bottom of the world. And that version is true, and it matters enormously. But the version that stays with you is different. It is the story of what happens when a small group of people chooses voluntarily to step outside the ordinary world and live for 8 months in a place that asks everything of them. Where the work is essential, the community is everything, and the darkness is real. And the light, when it returns, means something it cannot mean anywhere else. Most of us will never stand on the ice. We will never watch the last plane disappear into a sky we cannot follow it into. We will never feel the particular weight of a midwinter that is also a halfway point, a marker between the dark that has been endured and the dark that remains. But perhaps that is the gift that places like Antarctica offer to the rest of us. The reminder that simplicity is not deprivation, that a world with less in it can still contain everything that matters, that human beings, given a reason and a community and a shared purpose, are capable of enduring and finding meaning in almost anything. We want to hear from you. If you were offered a place on a winter-over team, 8 months, no way out, the coldest place on Earth, would you go? What would you be willing to leave behind? Tell us in the comments. We read every single one. If this film changed how you think about isolation, about community, about what a human being actually needs, share it with someone who would understand why that question matters. Next week, we are going somewhere that makes its own rules. A peninsula that belongs to no country, follows no calendar, and has kept women out for over 1,000 years. A place where 30 monasteries cling to cliffs above the Aegean Sea, and where the men who live there have chosen a silence so complete that the modern world cannot reach them. We will be there. We will see you there.